Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021. Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021.
All right, we are live.
I think it comes down to doing what's right for the customer, which everybody can do. I mean,
but the feeling, the entertainment, the social features, the content value is there.
Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021. Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021.
All right, we are live.
I think it comes down to doing what's right for the customer, which everybody can do. I mean,
But the feeling, the entertainment, the social features, the content value is there.
Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021. Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021.
All Alright, we are live.
I think it comes down to doing what's right for the customer, which everybody can do. I mean,
But the feeling, the entertainment, the social features, the content value is there.
Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv. 2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible, and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021. Picture everything from hot potato conversations to the latest in-depth industry insights at your fingertips. iGamingNext.tv aggregates all of our thought-provoking content into one centralized and intuitive platform. What's more, filter through with ease, allowing you to stay at the cutting edge of the industry.
Value added, but they can also decrease costs and increase security.
Visit iGamingNext.tv.
Hello, my name's Abby Rachel Cosgrave, and this is iGaming Next Power Hour Industry Update. Diversity. In 2021, it should not need much of an introduction, particularly when it comes to female inclusion in the male society and male workforce. You would imagine over 100 years after women were first given the vote that this would have become a bit of a non-topic to be discussing at this time. Yet here we are. In gaming, one of the most innovative, forward-thinking industries in which I've had the fortune to work, we seem to be in a place in 2021 where we're having to go back and discuss basic female inclusion. It's not a topic that's new to the gaming industry, and it's one that has been touched on many times over the years. It's recently been brought back to light due to a published panel of some 52 members by the Global Gaming Awards. If you haven't heard about it already, at the start of June, Gambling Insider, the organizer or publication behind the Global Gaming Awards, issued their new June issue. Within that issue, it featured the panel. So the panel which will go on to decide the 15 different categories of gaming awards. And this panel is made up of 52 members. So 52 leading executives across the gaming industry are put together, and they then assess all the awards which that will be given out across the gaming industry. It's a prestigious award. It's an award that's well sought after, and it's one that many people want. They further have one of the big four auditing firms in place. So far, so good. On publication of this panel in early June, many people across the industry were surprised to see that out of 52 panel members, 51 of them were male. This means that by the time that this issue was published, someone had sat there and allowed for image after image after image of male to be put there without anyone raising the question, why aren't there enough females on this panel? And this is without even looking at the other issues with diversity with there, because there was also a lot of noise to be made about that. But for the sake of clarity, it's easier at this time just to focus on the female to male issue. Many people across the industry, many females made a lot of noise about this, but unfortunately from the side of the awards organisers and from the side of the companies that were involved on the panel, the silence has been deafening. There's been very little response and very little outcome to what's happened. It's almost that if people thought, well, the noise will be temporary, and if we ignore it and go ahead as planned anyway, then perhaps we'll get it better next time. I don't believe that anyone thinks that this was intentionally done. I don't believe that anyone thinks that anybody wanted this outcome and wanted 51 members of a 52-strong panel to be male. But the fact that this still can happen as an oversight, or the fact that this could be the best that we could do as an industry, is concerning as a woman in this industry. The fact that nothing has been improved since is concerning to a woman in this industry. I've been in touch with many women, some who work at the companies where their CEOs or senior management members were involved in the panel, and many of those women have felt unable to speak out as loudly, and that in itself highlights another issue with the diversity. When issues like this arise, that in itself is not always the problem. Issues can arise and they can be a learning process for all of the industry. So if this had happened, and if there had been a reaction to it, if we'd have seen companies putting in place policies which would prevent their executives supporting any event going forwards, which was seen to not be supporting diversity, which wasn't considering diversity when it's putting itself together, then we would have moved one step forwards. But in burying our head in the sand, here we are, not moving forwards at all. One of the things that I've been asked since being so vocal about this issue is why? Why is this so important? It's one, judging panel. If you look at the statistics across the gaming industry, you can see that employee workforces are more diverse. In fact, many companies have come out citing the statistics, and it's fantastic. In fact, since I joined the gambling industry in 2014, you can see that over that 7-year period, improvements have been made. You can see that there are more women in the workforce. You can see there's more women at mid-management level, and you can certainly see there's more women, particularly in certain roles, at senior management level. And that's great. Nobody's saying that everything is wrong. Nobody is saying that the industry hasn't progressed. What people are now saying is the industry still has some work to do. Why is diversity so important, particularly in an industry like gambling? Why is representation important? And also, why is it not enough? Diversity is making sure that your statistics represent what is actually out there in the world. So your employee numbers will represent the reality of how many women there are. The second step is inclusion. So by the time you have numbers that are representative throughout your workforce, making sure that those people are included is centrally important. For any woman that's ever worked in the gambling industry, one of the main things that you may hear when questioning a decision that's been forced on you is to just get on board. When questioning a process being implemented incorrectly, or questioning whether things might be better done in a different way, just get on board. This is where inclusion fails, because you could have a workforce of 100 people, 5 who were male and 95 who were female. But if that 95 females have to just get on board with the directions of the 5 males, that workforce is not inclusive. Allowing for diverse voices to speak within your organization or to speak within the industry, that's taking a step from diversity towards inclusion. Inclusion could be spoken as what I'm doing here today. I'm given a platform to speak my views. They're not being silenced, and hopefully they'll be heard. After inclusion, you then get to what is phrased as belonging. Diversity, inclusion, belonging. And many people take the phrase belonging to mean simply feeling comfortable, feeling that you belong within an industry or an organization. I always take it one step further, because to me, true belonging is being able to guide the direction of that industry or organization. I don't think there's anyone that could argue or state otherwise than gambling is a male-led industry. It's a male-led industry led by males with a product that's for males. And it works. It makes money. And there's very little incentive sometimes to change that. And any change away from it is slow. And at some point, including a more diverse voice into that product might be the way to go forwards. I've spoken previously in articles that I've written about on this subject about new founders with a founder female voice, what could be changed, and why aren't women taking the step into founder position? We have numerous talented founders and CEOs across the gambling industry, the majority of whom are male, and no one is here to question their skill set or their talent level. What I am here speaking of, or starting a discussion about, is whether allowing for a greater female guiding voice within the industry could lead to a product that isn't being regulated out of business, that maybe did things slightly differently. So what we need to do as an industry, and we're doing some of the right things already, we are seeing increased numbers of females on C-levels and boards, and that's fantastic. Including and giving them a platform for the voice is the second one, allowing them to speak on your behalf, or allowing them to speak in these forums. That's step 2. But then giving them belonging, allowing for that voice to be heard, that's step 3. And this industry is not there yet. So once we start achieving step 3, if your business is not already doing it, you need to try and find a channel to allow for more diverse voices to reach founder level, board level, executive level. And that takes me on to suggestion number 2. Let's create some more diverse founders. I've gone out there with some suggestions, and I've spoken to some events companies about this. It's something I've been lobbying quite hard for. So the business needs to get together and provide, whether it's in your organization separately and you create founders and you build businesses alongside them, or whether it's the industry as a whole, which creates a platform for diverse founders, females, but all forms of diverse founders, to be able to come forwards and to be able to put these ideas forward. And last but not least, I believe that mentorship is important. And one of the things that you often find is that where you want to help women, or where you want to help anyone from a diverse background, there will be mentorships set up which pair you to someone similar. And they are really worthy things to do. I can understand why they happen. To put a younger woman with a woman that's been in the industry as a mentor for some years, it can be helpful, and there's certainly a level of guidance to be there. But in all honesty, the people that are achieving in this industry are still inherently majority male. So where we're at that level, there needs to be something done where people can have access to those mentors. The important thing with progress is that it never stops moving. And in order to get better, you can never be comfortable in where you are. You need to keep moving forwards. You need to enable voices to encourage why we move forwards. And as an industry, these ongoing discussions, even events such as this panel that have led to these discussions, they should be seen as beneficial to us and all. As has been said constantly over the past few weeks, we can do better, but together we can do better. Now, thank you for listening to me. I'm going to leave you with the rest of the conversations that we have on iGaming Power Hour.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Power Hour. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by two distinguished gentlemen, Mr. Matthias Dahms, President of Deutsche Sportwettenverband, I think I said that correctly, DSWV, and past President of IMGL and gaming practice lawyer for Melchers and superman of German regulation, Dr. Jörg Hoffmann. So both of you welcome today.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you very much.
Great
Rory.
to be here.
Good. Now, I think real significant development happened in Germany. In Germany this week. Well, actually, probably two if you count the result on Tuesday. But let's focus on the latter. But a real significant development on the state treaty of gambling came into force yesterday following the transitional regime from October. Jörg, so can you give some sort of brief insight into that and sort of how that's gone about day two as we see it now?
Yeah, yesterday we could say bye-bye to the Interstate Treaty 2020 and welcome the future of German gaming law. Or should I say we are rather at the beginning of future gambling regulation. Well, the transition went kind of smooth. It's just overnight. But of course, there was a transitional regime which basically applied to the casino industry. As many of you will know, since of October last year, a new regime was implemented that offered sort of a factual toleration of casino operators who adjusted their offerings to certain guidelines provided by the regulators. This is supposed to end by the end of June, but of course, the circular resolution, which forms the basis, one of the bases for that regulation, went beyond 30th of June. So we can say the transitional regime is still protecting compliant operators, which now have to apply for a license with the new gambling body, the regulatory body in Saxony-Anhalt. I suppose that these authority who took over responsibility yesterday will shortly provide some announcements. I wouldn't be surprised if they tell the industry, we expect a letter of interest to be submitted soon, telling us you were really interested to apply for a license, and then you can submit your license even now to this authority, and it will take a couple of months or weeks, and we will have first license casino type operators, which concern so-called virtual slot machines and online poker. And of course, there's still a licensing regime, a new one for sports betting. I will touch on this later. So the newly regulated industry for the private market in particular concerns sports betting operations, virtual slots, and online casino. And there's a new tax regime in place, which we will also mention later.
Cool. And Matthias, how have your, from an association point of view, how have your members sort of reacted to this? I mean, this is a significant step that's been taken. Do you feel there still needs more to be done, or to play catch up to Europe, certainly like the rest of the other regulations that are out there? What's your sort of viewpoint on that?
Me and all the members of our association, I think the whole industry is quite happy that we have done now this significant step into the future. As you may know, the regulation on gambling in Germany has really been a mess for the last 20 plus years, and we, not only as an association, but a lot of our members have strongly fought about this big step into the future. I think for the first time, all areas of gambling are now regulated in Germany. And we have to see how the authorities are going to deal with the whole thing. And the cooperation between the industry and the authorities is still something which has to be improved, to be honest. And if we have a look at the regulation in the past, the German lenders tried to keep their state monopolies as strong as possible, especially to keep the revenues on the lotteries, which have a significant impact to their budgets in the different lenders. And therefore, it has always been a strong fight between the private-owned operators and the state operators to develop this market. The state-owned operators were obviously very reluctant to do this and trying to keep as much as possible their hands on the whole market. Since the first state treaty we've got in, I think it was in 2008, there have been significant steps forward towards more European-like regulation and more European adaptable framework for the whole industry. And I think this new state treaty we have entered into yesterday, and this is a really big step, because now for almost all the areas of gambling, private operators are able to gain licenses or concessions, and but there's still a lot of potential for improvement. And although we have this new regulation, a lot of issues are still unclear how to handle them, and also the allowances themselves, for example, for virtual slots, where we are going to go into the applications now. There are a lot of question marks, and there we need to have a lot of discussion and consultation together with the authority. And the authority itself, as Jörg already has mentioned, is not really in place. They have a few handful of people who are going to run this application process now, and the authority will take over the full responsibility for the regulation of the market and the handling of the market, not before the 1st of January 2023. So there's a lot of time in between, and a lot of talks we have to do, and also a lot of potential we have to see.
Yeah, I mean, this has obviously been going on for a while. I think both you two, we all worked together about 10 years ago in an event that I was involved in. So, you know, it's gone back quite a long time. It's been taking quite a while to get here. Do you think has anything been learned from those 10 years? From, you know, will we be in a better place? And, you know, in your view, Jörg, do you think we learned a lot from it?
I think so. We learned a lot, but we didn't learn enough, of course. But if you imagine, you said we were working together more than 10 years. When we put together the first conferences, this was maybe in 2010 or whenever.
Yeah.
Since then, there was at least experience that could be made in Schleswig-Holstein. The first time that regulators learn about the industry, how are they really doing their business, and can we rely on what they tell us? I think this is very important. The same happened to Darmstadt, the regional council, starting with sports betting applications. The regulators always come from a past where they enforced against illegal operators, and the big picture of this industry was more like these are pirates of the Caribbean, but not rather reliable big companies and stock-listed operators. And we all have the same goals, which is protecting players, being legally safe. Those who apply for licenses are the good ones in the market. And I think these two regulators in Darmstadt and in Schleswig-Holstein, they learn step by step to distinguish between these two categories of operators in the market. That's a chance, and we will offer all support, of course, to the new regulator in Saxony-Anhalt to make the same experience. I concur with Matthias. It's so important that now it's the first time ever in Germany we have legal certainty. When you get a license, you can operate, do your business, you can advertise your product, and you can shape the future of regulation together with the regulators. Absolutely, I agree with Matthias. There is a lot of improvement which we need to do, but I think this needs time. We have to make experiences, we need to access it. And now we start with online casino type regulation, as I would call it. We start to continue with sports betting. Sports betting operators are there. New licenses were issued. Probably new licenses are going to be issued. The regime of application continues. We are looking into the future, and we're trying to do our best to keep this a strong market in the future.
Yeah, And how are those? Because you mentioned those number of licenses. There being the Todd license, the scene license. How are they all coming together? Are they?
Yes, but that's a very interesting question because it's a new chapter in history. So the old chapter expired by the end of June. The Schleswig-Holstein license, which was a transitional sort of licensing regime, literally these licenses expired by 30th of June. The same with sports betting license being granted to operators before 1st of July, and even the transitional regime was limited theoretically to the 13th of June. But there are transitional regulations. The new interstate treaty automatically stipulates that those granted sports betting licenses will continue automatically until the end of 2020. And then operators need to apply in an easier process, of course, for a new extended license as of 1st of January 23, which, by the way, is the date when the centralized regulatory body in Saxony-Anhalt takes over competence for all the verticals. Then Darmstadt will close down its responsibility for handling sports betting, and it will move to Saxony-Anhalt. As I said before, the transitional regime will continue. I don't think endlessly. It is said that until the new regulatory body takes over, my understanding is until licenses are available, and then you need to apply for a license. Once you get a license, of course, there is no longer a transitional regime, which you do not leave because you're in a better legal position. And Schleswig-Holstein, the law says, well, until the end of 2024, theoretically, they could be valid. But the license itself says they will be replaced automatically once you get a license in Saxony-Anhalt, which applies nationwide for the whole of Germany. So in that minute, it's over with Schleswig-Holstein. And I don't see this happening in 2023 or 2024, because I think two arguments are the balance, are the basis for protection under the transitional regime. First is compliance with rules. Second is willingness of applying for a license for virtual slots. And I think you will have to do this as an operator quite soon. And then it's a couple of months and you get your license. And those who will not apply within a certain time frame provided by the regulator shortly will be out of the game then later at a later stage. So I don't think we're talking about Schleswig-Holstein licenses in the course of next year very often. Might be an exception.
Cool. Matthias, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just although we have a lot of open questions now, what I already said, getting into talks is very important now. Those open questions, for example, relate to the current licenses of the sports betting operators. We expected that we would, for example, get an update of our current licenses, which contains the new regulations which came into force on the 1st of July following the state treaty. But unfortunately, we only, as a license holder, got a letter from the authority which stated that the licenses are prolonged by law until the 31st of 22, and that we have also to adopt all the new regulations from the state treaty in our systems, and that we have to connect, for example, to the databases, these strange central databases, which we may talk about them later, and that we have to follow all the new rules. But they didn't give us any interpretation of those rules, and the operators now who have to implement all these things are really struggling on that, because they don't really know how to handle all those things, and because there's no support, no given interpretation from the authorities. And it's really too hard to get.
Is that coming down the line though? Is that in place to be able to maybe be talked about at some point, just out of interest?
Yeah, and in fact, the new rules are in force since the 1st of July, and every operator has to implement those issues. There's a lot of new things in the state treaty, but nobody knows until when, if we have a transitional period there, or if they have to be operational since yesterday already, and what's about the new regulatory means, like the databases, where, for example, a new database for limits, where we have which is a central database, which is run by the authority in Saxony-Anhalt. And there, all the player limits, the cross-provider and cross-gambling area limits for deposits are set. And each operator who has already a license has to connect to this database and has to report all the deposits to this database. And maybe someday the customer is blocked then not to do any further deposits because the limit has been reached. And additionally, we have an activity database, which should prevent that a customer is not active on two platforms in parallel. And so the operators have to log on the customer to activate the customer via the database, and have to deactivate the customer on the database when he has left your platform. Nobody really knows if this will function, if the databases will be strong enough, the platforms will be strong enough to handle all the traffic, because we expect that there will be huge traffic, not only from the sports betting operators, but later on also from the slots operators and also the online casino operators.
I think, Matthias, that's a very good example that there's a lot of uncertainty and a high demand on clarification, which can only be provided by the regulators. And the operators need to understand, different to other jurisdictions, we don't have one central regulator in Germany at the moment. For sports betting, it's still Darmstadt. And for the new virtual slot machines, it is Saxony-Anhalt as of yesterday. And these technical challenges need to be synchronized. That's a challenge because, as you said, we have these two server systems. There's Argus in Darmstadt, Logos in Saxony-Anhalt. We have to find a way how to deal with this matter, and this needs some communication with the regulator. There were some concerns during June when this letter of the authority in Darmstadt came up and say the new interstate treaty will apply as of day one, which of course is a matter of fact. It's a law. It applies on day one. But I think they understand that the industry will not be ready to implement these technical challenges on 1st of July. The deposit limit is a very good example. The law says as of day one, you have to implement that standard deposit limit per player per month in the amount of €1,000 for sports betting as well. It also already applied for casino games, but then the regulator clarified they will come up with another information, a letter, approach the license holders and ask for a binding time frame, sort of a timetable, which the operators can submit to the regulator and tell them how much time they need to technically implement the deposit limit and other technical items. So I think it works in a very proper manner. We would have preferred, of course, to get this information earlier. But I think one of the downsides of our regulation of the interstate treaty is, which concerns to the current one and to the predecessing, is there are missing transitional regimes which you can really call transitional regimes. It's just set in stone and then you have to apply it. The good news is the authority learned a lot and they are really advanced and we can start these discussions. Of course, the industry must be warned. There's no way to buy time. If you need 1 month, you should tell them it is 1 month. If it's 2 months, fine. But telling them we need 8 months would, of course, be unacceptable.
Yeah, no, out of interest, these obviously got the licenses that were there before. What about the sort of applications that are still pending? Is there anything to be talked about there? Is that in limbo? Is it in no man's land, so to speak, at the moment? What's going on with that, I suppose?
Yeah, surprisingly, there are still a couple of applications, sports betting applications, still pending under the old regime, since the gambling committee in the last meeting couldn't make a final decision, meaning not to grant those licenses and also not to reject it, because there were still some open points. Those need to be clarified. To my knowledge, the next meeting of the gambling committee will take place on 14th of July, and those operators who are concerned, they know what open points need to be fixed and discussed. I think it's minor details, probably some miscommunication, probably some things that simply need to be fixed, because we can say that those applications who are concerned by that situations are applications where the regional council said we submitted to the gambling committee with the suggestion to grant a license. So they perfectly fine, with maybe some minor things that really need to clear up. I hope that the gambling community will review these amendments and adjustments, because it would be a really bad situation for all involved parties on every side if they could not conclude in a final decision in advance of the operators. And if they made a decision to reject licenses, these decisions were already submitted to operators. For those who decided who realized time will not allow to complete the application until 13th of June, the option was to to withdraw the operation and continue with an amended application under the new regime, which means there are some amendments, and then continue the application, hopefully getting a license then. So it's still, we have those where the proceedings were ended, and those where proceedings were pending, and those where proceedings theoretically start again, but will only continue. I think this is because the gambling committee would not love to see these pending applications which are not completed simply to transfer into the new regime. A few things are on top of what we knew from minimum requirements under the old regime. There will be some amendments applicable for the social concept, the responsibility concept. A new business concept is required, which is a small format concept. An advertising concept, since no longer the district government in Düsseldorf is responsible for advertising permits. This is all feasible, and if someone is interested to learn about the new requirements, the Regional Council of Darmstadt published the amended requirements yesterday on their website. You can look it up and find more information. It's in German only, but it provides the full information.
Cool. And Matthias, is this an opportunity or more of a challenge for the industry in your view? Is this the start of something good, or are we going to be? I think we did a poll earlier. I don't know where we're at with the poll yet, but I think is it going to be another 6 months, 12 months before we get anywhere? I don't know. What's your view on that?
So it's of course it's both. It's an opportunity and it's a challenge. At the same time, for the operator, of course, it's an opportunity because the German market is quite an interesting market. It's the biggest market in Central Europe, and although it has been handled in quite a bad way during the last 20 years for the gambling industry, what I told you before, it's nevertheless an opportunity because private operators now have the basis to enter into this market. And on the challenge side, we have all these restrictions and the strange things the German regulators have invented here. Like the databases I've just mentioned, they have invented restrictions also on advertising. For example, for slots, you're not allowed to advertise between 6 and 21 in the evening, and this applies on both the internet and also the television. And it's quite a hard thing to see that internet advertising has been switched off there for 15 hours during the daytime, and nobody knows how this should be handled. For example, with social media posts, if you use these channels for your marketing purposes, and so there are a lot of new ideas which have never been checked out in other parts of Europe or even the world. And so the German regulators have been quite creative there in this compromise between all the 16 lenders. We've seen being talking about over years, but nevertheless, we as an association have the feeling that we have a basis now, and we have to work together with the authorities to come to good conclusions and to good solutions there. And we're happy that we have this central authority now, that it will take over responsibility more and more during the next 1.5 years. And finally, that we have an overall regulated market here, and there's always potential for improvement. That's clear. All the other regulated markets have not started from the scratch with a feasible regulation, but we think that this will happen here in Germany over the next few years, and that it will be a quite interesting market for every international operator.
Great. That literally, my alarm's just gone off. So that's actually perfect timing to probably wrap this up. Listen, thank you so much for both of you for joining me today. I wish you all the best. And look, let's hope it's not another 10 years, because I'll be very grey by that point. And let's hope it's not another 10 years before we see any further development. So wish you all the best and good luck. And thank you for joining me.
Likewise. Thank you very much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great being here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Fabiola Jäger. I am the moderator of this panel today, in which we'll be talking about opportunities in Latin America. This session will examine the progression, adoption, and the evolution of mobile across Latin, which is fast becoming one of the most attractive places for the iGaming market. Welcome everyone. Let me tell you a bit more about me. I am the co-founder and CEO of Caleta Gaming. Caleta is a game provider based in the south of Brazil. City called Florianópolis, such a beautiful place. And today I have here with me two experts in the gaming market. Hugo, head of sales of Caleta Gaming, and Fernando, head of business development at Betcris, who will share their views on the current scenario and what we can expect for the future. So my first question is a very polemic one, but it's a good one. As we all know, there are many polemics about legalizing gambling, religion, money laundering, gambling addiction, but at the same time, the gray market is operating and does not generate any benefit apart from generating a lot of risks. Hugo and Fernando, in your view, why do some countries such as Brazil remain so outdated
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Fabiola. Nice to be with you, Fernando. A pleasure. I will start with that. Okay. So Brazil is a huge country and a lot of opportunities. Um, but we have been on this, on this market for the last 25 years in Brazil. So we passed it on. We have been working in the legal market of Brazil, and now everybody knows that Brazil, everything is illegal. From my perspective, the mind of the Brazilians, the mind of the legislators are changing, and we think that Brazil is going to have a legislation soon. Okay, so around 1995, 1996, everybody saw gaming as something bad and prohibited, but now the generations change and the mind also changed. So I think we are really close to a new legislation in Brazil. Remember that we already have a law about sports betting. It's not yet regulated, but we already have something in place. So I don't know if it's the right way to start, but anyway, it's a start. What do you think, Fernando?
Well, no, I'm pretty according to what you say, Hugo. Well, we had some years already in the industry, Hugo as well as me. We got, I believe, more than 20 years running around, so in different markets. So now, well, what we expect from Brazil market is what is happening right now. Before it was just focused more in traditionally Brazilian market was more focused in lottery business, and well, the lottery is very accepted for all the population for years. So from my point of view, the new online gaming and sports betting and all these new products and the market and for the government will be a process. So for the people and for the government will be a cultural process to accept it as well. The lottery is accepted worldwide already. So you can see your grandmother go after the Sunday church service, go to and buy some lottery, and nothing happened. It's accepted by the culture. So in the next years, I believe will be a transition for new generations to accept this, and together with the government to get everything on the table and more clear for everyone.
Great you mentioned that, because at the current situation, we look at the current gaming market here in Latin, and we can see a rapid growth and a lot of noise. Here in Brazil, especially more in the sports bet segment, as you told. We all know that Brazilians are huge football fans. We constantly live here in an atmosphere of football. And based on this, we can realize also that a lot of, the most popular football teams and the events, they are heavily sponsored by sports betting company. I'm aware Betcris has a leading position in the market as well. So why you guys think Latam is so highlighted at the moment?
Well, maybe I can start with that one.
Please, okay, you are the expert one.
Well, not the expert. I think we are not doing nothing new. For years, the companies, sports betting companies, especially in Europe, they were doing that. So we saw a sponsorship in big teams for years, and technically we are not doing nothing new. We are just adapting to this new market and what the people like it. So why we go and try to sport, as Fabiola mentioned, it's a massive sport. All the Brazilians love it, but there is not only soccer. So there is another two big sports in Brazil, very important. You don't have to take outside is basketball and volleyball. I know, guys, it's not massive like soccer, but it's also will be a very interesting how the companies will be moving, not just focus in soccer teams and take advantage of, to find more and more active. One is the sponsorship. So I believe that the challenge of the companies will be to close good deals, a lot of exposition, but that is not the one part. Is a complex situation because okay, you go and sponsor a team, but what happened next? So you will be chasing some customers. You will be, how you are going to handle that. So that will be the interesting thing. And well, I believe the companies are hiring the right people. I know in Brazil, and we have some good people on board in Brazil. They got a lot of experience in marketing and sport betting, not specifically in sports betting, but in sports marketing. And well, that will be part to include professionals in the area, in the countries we are doing, and well, work on that. But yeah, we are not doing nothing new. We are just adapted to the new markets as well, Brazil.
As you mentioned, Fabiola, a lot of different companies as BetCris, they are coming to Brazil and sponsoring different soccer teams and even sponsoring championships. So it's really easy to see now with Copa America and with Euros, you can see different kind of sponsoring. And unfortunately, from my perspective, we still don't have regulation. So who is losing that? The government, only the government, because the clients, they are already get engaged, the companies are coming, and the government is not taking any advantage of it. So that's what I think. So they have to remember that this law is already approved. It's just a question of regulating it.
Right. Yes, agree. Totally agree. Yes, as you mentioned, looks like we are going through a transition period. And Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, and more recently Brazil, they are all facing new challenges. But there's a new momentum for federal and state lotteries in Brazil. Looks like both may be explored by the private sector. In your view, why are lotteries allowed while the bingo and casinos are not? Why we have this difference? I know you,
Well,
Hugo, you have a solid experience
maybe Hugo,
not only in Brazil, but in Mexico and other countries.
Okay.
But
can
you please give your view about this?
Sure. I mean, well, we started 25. I mean, we as Brazil started with bingo with numbers games 25 years ago, and everybody knows that bingo is huge in Brazil. Unfortunately, we never had strong legislation and regulation. So around 2004 and 5, everything was prohibited. But unfortunately, there was also, how can I say, the games, the gray market is still present in Brazil. So talking about lotteries, this whole thing started, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't recall it sadly. And last September, the Supreme Court decided that the states could also have their own lottery. Okay, so with this decision, opened 27 different markets in Brazil, inside Brazil. So now what I can see is a big movement with a lot of different companies coming to Brazil, and all states are trying to understand what is the lottery market is, because they really don't know. Remember that only Caixa has the right to explore the lottery business in Brazil. So we do not have expertise. I mean, Brazilians don't have expertise. So that's why we can see a big movement of different companies coming to Brazil and trying to explore the lottery business. Remember that we have 27 states and 27 different markets that just open up in Brazil. And Fabiola, answer your question. Fernando, answer your question. Why we have lotteries and we don't have bingo? Again, it's up to the government to decide what they have. But I only see that in the positive way. So I see that something is happening, and somehow the other question that you made me about sports betting and not regulated. So with this lottery business, the states, they're gonna regulate it, sports betting before the federal government. So it will be a run between federal government and the states government, who is going to regulate first the sports betting. And again, federal government are not taking advantage of this business.
Yeah, no, as Hugo mentioned, well, it will be a challenge also, not just the regulation side, will be a challenge in the market for these products in the digital transformation. Because right now, as well, you are from Brazil, the traditionally is on the paper, is printables, or you have to walk in a shop, buy your lottery tickets and everything. But now look at how many companies, as well as you guys, are developing games and some new products day by day, so that will be very interesting situation, not just the regulation side and what happened next. So if the 27 states will be regulated soon, what happened with the content so just for Brazil market, I believe we need, I don't know, like 20 or more new companies, because it's a huge market, talking about population and the percentage of the people who love to play.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, that's a kind of business that Brazil is learning, and soon we have next week the first bid to take place in Rio. So we're gonna have an idea how it's going to be done in the rest of the Brazilian market.
Great. Going back to the legalizing gambling, I was reading something that mentioned that the gambling addiction affects around 1% of population, and like alcoholism affect 12% of population, and we are all allowed to drink. So on your view, how could they track these addicted players? I know you have some. You mentioned already something about this, the way they do in Mexico, Hugo, but there are many ways we could do this through the technology, etc. How do you guys see this? Why the government keeps saying no, because we can make some players addicted, etc. So how could we avoid this? Not avoid, but how we can manage.
Okay, I can give you a land-based perspective, but Fernando, start first with the online, and then I give the land-based perspective in Mexico.
Yeah, well, based on the online perspective and in regulated markets, the big benefits of that to attack and work and everything. So once we know the customer in every single online platform, we got the option to provide help, to provide auto exclusion. Right now we got the auto exclusion buttons and everything and services in the once the customers start to play in a different way, the traditional way he does, there is an option in the one he can block by themselves, or even we have to follow some regulations guidance how to treat that. So is government involved in the regulation side? So is government involved? There is a private entities to help in that, to control how the players they are doing, how many hours, even there is a lot of options in the online gaming, because the customer, you got the information what they are doing, what the usual, if they came and just play $20 and suddenly start to play, I don't know, 100, 200. So it's an alert. So, and there is so many institutions worldwide they are doing right now. Most of the companies we are connected with these institutions or organizations, like in Europe or even in Latin America, to try to control that one. So based on the regulation, and the online is, I believe, is easier to control and help to this situation. And why, for example, alcohol and gaming? So, well, alcohol culturally, we go back to culturally will be for years, so will be accepted. Is a, of course, is a massive consumption, and well, I believe is that. So we get more control online. If we are regulation to control that, will be very helpful for to attack this and prevent, especially.
Maybe what I'm going to tell, lots of people knows about it, but it's important to say again. Brazilian government keeps saying that they have no way to track the players and track and prevent money laundering. And I keep saying to everybody in Brazil that Mexico is a good example where there's no bill acceptors in the machines. There's only SaaS system. So you have to identify yourself exactly who you are, where you live, and you can track how much money that person is spending. So I tell this to different people in Brazil, and they don't believe, or they don't want to believe. Right? It's a kind of complicated situation, but it's something that I keep saying to everybody, and people understand. But I don't know how much they can really put in their mind that the time has passed, and now we have tools to track people and money when it's coming from. I mean, you can see this in the banks, and it's really easy. So again, it's in the same the same case in gaming. And from my perspective, Mexico is a good example for the Brazilian entities.
Yeah, good one. Right. So we are aware that Chris as well as Caleta are responsible gaming enthusiasts. And we also know that many Latin countries suffer a lot from pandemics, not only Latin, but everywhere. Fernando, could you give us your opinion? How could gaming regulation, how could this help the economy? I'm aware that Betcris sponsors some countries in like Guatemala, Nicaragua, etc.
Yeah, well, the main thing I believe is in a regulation process or in a regulation country will be simple, will be taxes, and where go to the taxes to all the population. So we got a good example with that with the Colombia regulation. Colombia regulation right now, we are talking their destination or destinated like more than $2 million to the public health and security. So it's an important number. They are giving a huge support to that area. So that is great, and well, education as well. And why not? Also, we can talk about all the jobs we generate. So in the land-based casino, we generate a lot of jobs. But for example, in the online gaming as well, you know, because you are in this market. So how many people is right now getting some jobs and direct and indirect jobs, you know, about this? So programmers, developers, people from marketing, you know, commercial, sales, products, everything. Every single t-shirt you go and sponsor, and there is someone who printed the name or the brand in that shirt, also will be giving some money from this. So it's not just how much money will be taking the government, because that will be important, but there is another huge money will be around in the economy, you know, outside of the government. So that will be great. And also this economy also generate taxes. So at the final, taxes talking, the big winner, as Hugo mentioned, will be the government. So they will be having more money to help people. We hope they use it to help people. But yes, is that from my point of view, that is a huge thing. So regulated, control, the KYC, as Hugo mentioned before, You have to know your customers, not just the banks. Now every single company, we got to go and follow and know our customers.
Correct. I have an old friend that always say to me, for example, it happens in some countries in Latin America, but I have an old friend that says to me that there is not people that wants the regulation. There is an industry that keeps saying that's not possible to track. So he calls it as the industry of the gray market, because people want it, and they keep saying that the best, that we cannot track, we cannot do anything in a good way, and they keep saying that's not possible. So they support the unregulated markets. That's what my friend says always.
Yeah, but we all know that it is possible to track. I mean,
we know, absolutely.
Sure.
We have an example.
Even in land base, like you mentioned before. So
correct.
Land base,
yes, correct.
You can track it right now. You have to track. Actually, the private companies now, they have to focus, and so you go into an investment for a sponsorship or doing something. So you have to tracking and following what that investment will be returned to your company. So it's a tracking thing and regulation.
Yes. So we are at the end of the panel. I would like to thank you for your attention. We still have 2 minutes. Is there any final message you guys would like to give?
Well,
go ahead, Fernando.
No, please.
I finished. Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation, for the panel. It's a pleasure to be here and always talking about Latin America market, and hopefully you're gonna see all the unregulated markets regulated very, very soon. Always available. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, as well, Hugo mentioned. Well, thank you so much. iGaming Next and you guys to share some information. It's great to share information not just with colleagues on the industry from some other industries, banking, government, everything. Is from my perspective, this is a teamwork. So we cannot just do it from one side for the companies or the government or providers or something. So we have to work together. COVID situation was like a stop momentary. But now I believe the next year, and it's happening right now, we will be more active, more in presential events, and is the idea. Share the information, share the everything we know between companies, and it's a teamwork. So thank you so much, and thank you, Fabiola, also.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. And let's see. I hope next time we speak, we can be talking about the regulated market in Brazil and every country in Latin.
Obrigado, and pura vida.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obrigada, gracias.
Ciao.
Welcome to a very exciting session as we're going to talk about Canadian sports betting, something that just recently was passed. And I've got two great experts north of the border from me. Paul, Nick, can you say hello and just introduce yourselves to the audience real quick? Paul, we'll start with you.
Sure. Paul Burns. I'm President and CEO of the Canadian Gaming Association.
Nick?
I'm Nick Selski. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for PointsBet Canada and the first Canadian employee for PointsBet up here.
Well, congratulations. And for the record, by the way, my name is Brendan Bussman. I'm Partner and Director of Government Affairs with Global Market Advisors. Paul, I'm going to jump to you first because I think you should be able to at least take a victory lap for a lot of work and a lot of effort over what got done. Sort of give an overview of not only where we're at and what got passed, but obviously how long it took you to get there and take that victory lap a little bit.
It was over 10 years to get this done, 3, maybe 4 bills. We had I've always remarked to people, it was really for something everybody agreed should get done, took an awfully long time to make it happen. And laterally, we had a strong coalition of from not only the gaming industry, but from amateur sport, from communities, from business and labor organizations, the provincial governments. So it was a wide array of people that came behind this and stayed behind it, and literally stayed behind it for the last decade. The last group that came to the table were the North American professional sports teams. And they didn't lobby aggressively against this before. They just really let their opinion be known and kind of let it go. And they were willing to content to see whatever the parliament decided to do in our previous attempts. But this time they got behind it, and they were in strong. The Canadian Football League in particular and the NHL both appeared in front of the various committees, made their views known. There was other written submissions, including the NFL. And but also, the Canadian Olympic Committee, Canada Soccer. There was lots from the amateur community who saw the benefits in this happening as well. So it was a long journey. We had this actual bill process wasn't that long. It got interrupted for the pandemic because it was introduced in February of 2020. Parliament really ceased to function in its normal routine until virtually September. And so when things picked up in the fall, it moved fairly quickly. And the government even brought their own bill in behind this to say, we're going to get behind this and do it. And then they subsequently walked away from it, supported the private members bill. And thanks to the work of Kevin Waugh in the House, but also Senator David Wells and Senator Brent Cotter were two in the Senate of Canada that really needs the shepherding of those two senators made it happen in the time frame that it did. And we owe a lot of thanks to them.
Nick, you mentioned you're the first, employee, Canadian employee, if I can say that right, of PointsBet, one of many companies that's probably going to be interested in this market. For somebody like you that, now sort of has the on-ramp to start moving forward, one, what excites you about the potential for this market? And why is PointsBet interested in expanding their brand, from my perspective, north of the border?
Those are really good questions. I mean, I think I'll start here. I think that the passing of C218, and again, Paul's had Gatorade dumped on him virtually many times, and I'll do it one more time. Kudos to Mr. Paul Burns and all the great work at the CGA. Canadian sports betting in Canada last year triggered about $14 billion worth of illegal wagers, both from the offshore sports betting operators and organized crime and bookies and things like that. What excites me as a Canadian, first and foremost, is that finally this industry is going to be properly regulated, and the consumer protections are finally going to be installed by the provincial regulatory bodies who are going to have oversight. Of course, there's lots of conversations around tax revenues and around, the amount of jobs that are going to come into this market, and quite frankly, the significant trickle-down effect that the additional revenues that are going to come into the sports industry are going to have on the grassroots nature of Canadian sport en masse. But I think that what excites me the most about this market, of course, there is there are reports that says that within 5 years, the Canadian legal Canadian sports betting industry could bring into a tune of $25 billion. I think that's from a overall economic impact. It could be even.
Oh, I think we maybe lost Nick. He's frozen. Paul, you're still there, right?
I am still here.
Okay.
Well, it's potential for a big market. There's no question, is what Nick was saying. And it's really, I think when you look at the Canadian per capita spends, we're probably higher than US, probably somewhere in the same vein as the UK, and we'll be, we could see that growth. So there's there's lots of room for growth though in the market still, and I think that's what Nick was going to get to, and I'll let him get back to these here again.
Yeah, Nick.
I'm sorry for that. The age of 2021 in panels, right?
Yep.
So yeah, like to Paul's point, and what I was saying is there's not only a significant amount of revenue that's going to be able to be driven into the Canadian gaming industry, tax revenues and jobs, but there's going to be significant impact all the way down to the grassroots level of sport. And from a PointsBet perspective, I'm the first Canadian employee for PointsBet, and we will be building a distinct Canadian business, distinct gaming operation, hiring best-in-class Canadians to operate within this industry and in this country. That is what's so exciting about the opportunity to build that brand in a truly authentically Canadian way to really help prop up the sports ecosystem as a whole.
Well, and I think, both of you have talked about, the opportunity and the market opportunity that exists from a revenue perspective. I always find it somewhat humorous, but not, the gray market's been sort of the standard up there right now, and black market. And I remember when Jersey went live 3+ years ago, and everybody went, so this means I can go to my bookie now legally as opposed to what I was doing before. Paul, let's start with you. Obviously, the regulatory structure is going to matter off of this, and obviously timing to get that in place is key. Maybe what are some of the next steps that we have to focus on now that we've got the legal means to do it, and sort of timeline to get this into a regulated box as opposed to the one that's existed currently?
Well, that's great. The one thing when people can be sure, there's no more legislation required at the provincial level or anywhere else. So it's all regulation. So it's all done and can be done in a very short order. And they've been working on it. So we've been working with, as an industry association, we've had a working group of regulators and industry talking about the regulatory framework for sports in Canada. It will be done on a province by province basis. It will look very different in every jurisdiction because the offering has not been fully fleshed out in many jurisdictions. Ontario because they're moving to their regulated iGaming market, is the big market everybody's focused on, right? It's probably the 5th biggest market in North America. It's got almost 35-40% of the population of Canada. It's a big market. That's what everybody's concentrating on. But there's others coming too, and other provinces are still working through what they're going to do. So you will see this move very quickly in some jurisdictions. BCLC has already said we're going to be out within weeks with some regulation. Other provinces are not far behind. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario will probably have their draft standards for sports out in the next 30 days. So, I think by fall, you're really going to see more robust offerings out there in the marketplace right away. And I think that Ontario is supposed to open their new regulated marketplace at the end of 2021. I more of contend that, well, that started last Tuesday. And because there's less of a reason now than there was before for the gray market to not, to stay out of the market. Not that they were, but the fact is that any last impediment they may have thought that they had is now gone. And so it's game on now for a lot of people, which is the reality we've been living with in this country. And we got to figure that out. I mean, that's where a lot of jurisdictions, as they look to the economic benefits that Nick pointed to. How do you realize those? One offering in one market from a lottery corporation may not, in fact, be the right mix. It may be for some, it may not be for others. That's what they've got to determine. Because competition in the sports betting marketplace can be helpful. People odd shop, right? Some books do this sport better than that sport. We know all of that. And that's where they got to be cognizant of what's going to happen in the market, because outside of Ontario, everybody can still search for that gray market. It's still going to be there. And so what's going to happen? And that's a bigger question, I think, that lurks over the other provinces outside of Ontario when they have to look at their market.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Paul was saying there, a multiplayer market, what that will do is that will drive innovation. Ultimately, all operators, we are in the business of servicing the sports fan. We want to create the best possible experience to make the experience of loving sports better. So when you don't have a multiplayer market, and I would argue a multiplayer market of regulated operators whose priority are protecting the customers and those experiences, when you don't have those multiplayers involved in that type of market, the innovation that drives better consumer experiences and better product experiences is less vital, right? When you don't have to try and be the best product, well, the desire to spend the time and the money to do that is reduced. And I'm a big proponent in having competition is healthy, because at the end of the day, we are here to service the Canadian sports fan. And if the products can't grow and evolve to do that most efficiently, we're not serving those interests, right?
Well, and I think you bring up a very valid point off of that. And it's something that, we've continually said from our perspective, not only representing clients, but just from a thought leader in this space, is competition is a good thing. And we've run into situations in the United States that haven't necessarily led to a good competitive market and try to keep players out. And I'm not going to pick on any states because there's a host of them that would be that case. But I think it brings up a valid point. And Paul, I'm going to turn back to you off of this because I think it's something you hit on. Obviously Ontario is leading the way off of this, but as we've been pinged by operators that we know are interested in coming, into the market, how do we see the rest of the provinces coming through and saying, okay, I'm going to adopt, what Ontario does, or, and I think there's going to be some shifting of not only who moves first, but second, and so on and so forth. It's the same dynamic we faced here in the United States. And you have some markets like Texas and California that have been in the waiting, but by God, we got, Wyoming done this year, and everybody's excited over a small market. But, how do you see things shaping out, beyond Ontario?
Well, I think it's going to predominantly be led by the lottery corporations when you look at various jurisdictions. The province of Alberta, for example, put out a request for information back in April, looking for a retail sportsbook offering with a mobile option. And the end of that was for retail in a casino environment. Alberta has 27 casinos in the province, a very robust competitive marketplace. Alberta is also one of the provinces that have the highest per capita spends. And so when you look at that and say, in our conversations with the Alberta Gaming Liquor and Cannabis Commission, we said the gray market's coming. They're going to be there. So you have an offering through Play Alberta, your online site for your province, and they're launching that site soon. But you understand that there's a retail component that's important for the casino sector to be able to drive that for their customer in some form or fashion. And you need to put these, give those options to the gaming sector, because that's obviously it's an important part, and it's not all online, not all mobile, but it's also not a lottery kiosks in every corner store either. We think that the casino environment is the best place for it. And to get that right, to give them the option, but also creates that competition within the marketplace. So call it a pseudo tethered market if that's what they end up doing, whether they let in 1, 5, or 10. I don't know what they're going to do yet. But the point is that at least they've started to look at the options. Saskatchewan next door is about 1 million people. But the predominant operator there, the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority, is going to be given the mandate for sports and online for the province. Do they have more than one given the marketplace? I don't know. And that's they may start with one. Maybe they'll find out they need another. The others are predominantly going to be driven by the lottery corporations initially, and that's where I think they have to see what the market capture is, what's the growth in terms of their own businesses, and seeing if they're getting it right or not. And I think Ontario's happy to, and the regulators been sharing for those who have asked in other provinces what they're doing in terms of creating a regulated marketplace. But Ontario is going to be unique for North America, right? It's an open licensing system. It's the only place I believe it's going to happen in North America where literally anybody who wants to come and apply for a license can. And I think that's going to be unique for North America. I think it's going to be the only place that happens. And so others will probably more of a tethered model or a limited offering, and being able to bring that competition competitive market inside a bit of a ringed fence, which you've seen in a number of the U.S. states where they've invited in 7 or 10 or 6 or whatever the number is of sportsbook operators to just offer sports. And that's going to be key, because in Ontario, the difference is too, they can offer, the sportsbooks will be able to offer online casino games.
Very good.
Which is
Nick, from your perspective, I'd love to hear, from an operator perspective, as you're looking at the totality of Canada, and obviously, it's no different than you've got down here in the US, you've got small and large states, same thing with provinces up there. Paul's highlighted some of that. How are you guys approaching this? And obviously don't want to give away the company secret, because there may be some of your competitors listening on this, but would love your perspective of how an operator's looking at the market as opposed to, somebody that's fought the battle for the last decade plus to get this across the finish line.
Well, I will say this, and to Paul's point, the regulatory framework is still kind of working its way through and how it's going to shake out. We do know that Ontario is going to be first, right? And obviously that market is going to be the initial priority. But I think that this market is unique to the world. Canada is not like the States. It's not like Europe. It's not like Australia. Canada is not just going to be another state. Canada cannot be treated like that. The US, there's a popular adjective to describe the US where it's a melting pot, right? And you could argue that a lot of the states are also very similar in the US. Yes, there's subtle differences between Ohio and New Jersey, but ultimately America is a melting pot. Canada, on the other hand, is a mosaic. Canada is extraordinarily unique. A sports fan in Kelowna is entirely different than a sports fan in St. John. And there are very few operators that will inherently understand that. From the way that I believe PointsBet Canada is going to approach this market is with that knowledge base. And the reason why, and this is just fact. I've driven every inch of the Trans-Canada Highway. I know how unique this country is, and our goal is to bring an authentically Canadian approach to the market, both because we have a product that we own. We built our own tech stack. We own our own. We own our own roadmap, so we can customize our product to the Canadian market. But even more so than that, we have the ability and the knowledge base to not just look at the Canadian market as unique, but look at the specific areas within the Canadian market as unique. It's to a point where Brampton, Ontario is different than Ottawa, right? There aren't that many other operators who actually know that there's a town in Ontario named Brampton, right? So the fact is, I think that what we're going to see in this market, it's going to be highly competitive. I do believe that product is going to ultimately win out, but the exciting thing that this market also has, finally, is provides a platform for uniquely Canadian experiences to be created and put in front of the Canadian sports fan, because we are a great and unique people. And that's what's really exciting to me, is thinking about how to do that, right? It's hard enough just to say it, but then to actually try and do it, right? And that's where the challenge of that is so exciting to me. And I'm excited to see, I hope other operators are listening, because the reality is, more than anything else, I'm not just an operator. I'm a Canadian. I love this country, and I want to see this. I want to see the entire ecosystem grow. And the only way that's going to happen is through great competition, is through all of us driving each other, and hopefully all of us putting the consumer first, both from a product perspective, but also from a protections perspective. And I think that's where the gray market operators in the gray space, that's where I start having concerns. because those gray market operators, they do not put consumer protections first. That's just a fact. And so that's where the complications in my head really start boiling up. But ultimately, to Paul's point, I mean, the regulatory framework has not been established in each province. So I hope they do take what happens in Ontario and they do learn and iterate and evolve it. So as the other provinces do, put forth their regulatory framework, that they learn from some of the successes of Ontario, and they also adapt from some of the mistakes.
We're starting to run a little bit short on time, but I want to sort of get one more question and maybe a last word. Let's first focus on a year from now, and I know that was always the benchmark once PASPA was overturned. Now that we're 3 years in, everybody says, "Hey, I can't believe how much the market's grown." The three of us get together again a year from now. What do things look like? Who's live? Who's getting ready to? Paul, I'll start with you.
Well, I think it's going to be with Ontario, it's going to be a pretty dynamic market. I think there'll be a lot of players in initially seeing how they do in the first, the level of investment commitment to market for some who just, may come by and visit, to others who are making investments. I think we'll see it all initially. I think we'll see the provinces beyond Ontario take a hard look at where they're at in terms of the product they have, the level of sports betting, the handle that they've seen, whether it's growing the way they want it to grow, because if it's a single offer in their jurisdiction, do they need to make some changes? But I think it's going to be, a very active market. There's no question about it 12 months from now. And I think the handle you're going to see, the legal handle will probably in the $5 to $7 billion range potentially in the first year. I think that's a fair assessment when you see across the country. And then where does it go from there? That's going to be interesting. I think it's a lot's going to depend on whether private operators particularly, are allowed in beyond the province of Ontario. I think that's going to be key to see where the growth is.
Nick, same question to you.
No, it won't come as a surprise to you and surely not Paul, but I agree with everything Paul said. Yeah. And I think the competition is going to be significant. But what I think about is I think about Target. Are you familiar with the U.S. department store Target?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with what happened to Target when they came to Canada?
Yes.
That's what I think about. And for your audience that has not had exposure to the experience that Target had in Canada, Google it, right? I will not be surprised if we see a number of Targets, right? And it goes back to what I was saying before. I don't want to belabor that point. It's going to be noisy. There's going to be a lot of competition. I think that I'm more excited to see what this market looks like 2 or 3 years from now, because at that point it'll be a little bit more. It'll be more mature. That we will have what's the right the herd will have been culled back slightly. There'll probably be some strategic partnerships and things like that are in play. It'll be interesting to see how some of the other leagues and teams address which partners they're excited and willing to work with. What interests me is something that Paul talked about, is when Ontario regulates and allows the compliant or the regulated operators and the operators who won't play in the gray space. How will Ontario sports teams, associations, leagues, brands, how will they react to partners of theirs operating in the gray space across the rest of the provinces while Ontario has licenses? That to me is a very interesting question, not from an operator's perspective, but how are the brands who are also creating compelling propositions and messaging for their audience, how are they going to justify to their fans that they've partnered with a company that is operating in the gray space in another Canadian province? If you're speaking about creating a national brand for your sports team or your league or your association, how do you balance that? That I'm very interested to understand. And that's why I think that 2-3 years from now, when more than just Ontario is regulated and you have compliant operators in the space, I think that's when you're going to really start kind of seeing how product is going to put is going to get in the forefront. Because let's face it, when Ontario opens up, there are a slew of gray market operators who will have a significant head start, and you have some other of the compliant operators who haven't entered the space, who have users within their databases that they're going to be able to, from legitimate means, that they're going to be able to turn on right out of the gate. So it'll be interesting to see how, it's not a sprint. We've heard this before. It's going to be a marathon. And what I'm really interested to see, less so about 1 year, because I think Paul hit it. I mean, it's going to be pretty predictable what it's going to look like a year from now. It's 3 years from now. That's what I'm really interested to look at, or really interested to see.
Well, let's pick up the conversation a year from now and 3 years from now. I want to thank you both for your time, and I want to thank the audience for joining us today. And it's going to be an exciting few months ahead. And Nick, as you said it best, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So thank you both.
Thanks, Brendan.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Sorry about my Wi-Fi connection.
Thanks, guys.
Two dominant industries, two influential minds. Power Hour is proud to bring together marketing and iGaming. With Guy Kawasaki and Todd Haushalter, join the renowned Silicon Valley venture capitalist and marketer of the groundbreaking Macintosh, who will play guest to Evolution's chief product officer and the inventor of myriad casino games, Todd Haushalter. This July the 2nd, you can expect some of the most riveting and insightful conversations yet.
Guy Kawasaki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. I know a lot of people are excited to have you. Us here in the gaming industry, we don't often get Silicon Valley legends coming to say hello to us. So, every day I live in a world of trying to think about innovation. I know our whole industry tries to think about this, and you're sort of at the center of the center. You've got some of the most viewed podcasts or viewed TED Talks on the internet, talking about innovation. Worked with Steve Jobs a couple of times. Just incredible legend in the world of innovation, author of a dozen books. How would you describe yourself, Guy?
Well, with much greater modesty than that. I am Chief Evangelist of Canva, which is the online graphic design service, creator of the Remarkable People podcast. And that's it right now. In a prior life, I was chief evangelist of Apple. I was a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador, and I was a board of trustee of the Wikimedia, which is Wikipedia organization. So, yeah, I've been around a long time.
I got to say, it's so cool. I mean, like all of us in pretty much like every industry that ever talks about innovation, we all talk about Apple and Steve Jobs. And,
sure.
I'm sitting here talking to a guy that was at the center of the center on the marquee project, maybe in the history of Apple. And you were at the center of the center working with the master. That had to be just an incredible time. And I got a question, when you were actually living through it, did you know you were living through history
Not at all.
Yeah, I bet.
Not at all. And yes, to really back up that sentiment that I didn't know, I left Apple twice and I turned Steve Jobs down for another opportunity. So in a sense, I walked away from Apple 3 times. So if I knew that I was in the center of the universe and it's going to be $1 trillion company, I would have stayed.
Yeah, we're all great at predicting the past.
Yeah, but that's kind of a monumental blunder. This is not like, I never should have eaten that, piece of bacon. This is a lot bigger than that.
So, why, at the moment of truth, what did you just view Apple as it's another company? They're doing fine, they're growing, they're popular, they're known.
Part of it is a Silicon Valley disease. And I mean that in a positive sense. that we always think we can do better. And so I quit Apple twice to start companies. And at the point of quitting, I really thought, okay, I'm going to start a new company and this is going to be better than Apple. Not necessarily bigger, but with more benefits and more payoff and more fun than Apple. So clearly I was wrong. And that's part of being in Silicon Valley. Otherwise, we all would have stayed working for Hewlett-Packard or Intel or National Semiconductor. But people quit those kind of companies because of fundamental optimism, borderlining on delusion, that there can be a better way, they can be a better company. It's better to be an entrepreneur. I mean, for the longest time, if you told somebody you work for a company for 20 years in Silicon Valley, the reaction would not necessarily be, you've made a career, you've been really successful. It would be like, why have you not quit? Like, what's wrong with you? It's a very different perspective. So one of the lessons I learned looking back in my career is that contrary to the belief of always trying to optimize and find where the grass is greener, you could make the case that you should water and fertilize the grass you're standing on, because the grass is not necessarily greener, and maybe you can make your grass greener where you already are.
Do you think maybe we've not we, you and me, but do you think maybe the general Silicon Valley mentality has maybe overshot it a little bit? Maybe they don't need to stay 20 years, but maybe they're so looking for the next thing. Do you feel like it's sort of in the sweet spot, or what?
Well, if you looked at my case, you'd have to say we overshot it. But this is one of those management book conundrums that whenever you read a management book, whether it's written by me or anybody else, it's not really quote unquote scientific. There was no hypothesis being tested. There was no controlled experiment, right? So in my case, looking back, I could tell you there's 2 or 3 times where I should have stayed and watered the grass I was standing on. On the other hand, you may pick up another book and that book will say, yeah, the best thing I ever did was quit XYZ and I started this and, now I'm Elon Musk. And so when people read those 2 books, they're like, what do you do? Do you pivot or do you gut it out? Pivot or gut it out? And you could build the case either way, but nobody has really done this statistical analysis of, if you pivot, there's an X% chance of success. If you gut it out, there's an X% of chance. And then we conducted a scientific experiment where we controlled all the variables except changing the business. And balancing all those other factors, we can prove scientifically it's better to do X. There's no such thing.
And it's so hard because the stories all get written about, is it Mark Benioff left Oracle, was it, I think?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So they get written about, you leave Oracle and then you get to go and start Salesforce and you get to become a multi-billionaire. People don't write the books about maybe it's 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1 or 100,000 to 1 stories on the other side. So you get this very wild selection bias.
Yeah, it's total selection bias. And it also vastly oversimplifies the situation that, Mark Benioff worked for Oracle. He had an idea to make cloud-based software, so he quit and he started Salesforce. And now, he's got the tallest building in San Francisco and, UCSF hospital's named after him. But there were a few other details in there. And you know what? You only hear about the Larry Ellisons, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, the Mark Benioffs. This list is short. We could go down through 10 or 15 names, and you never hear about the 15,000 names who never escaped the pull of gravity. Mm-hmm. But so it's really it almost makes your head explode. I mean, I could apply the same line of thinking. I could apply the same line of thinking to professional athletics, right? So you only hear about the LeBron James And you only hear about the Wayne Gretzky's, and you don't hear about the 7,500 other kids who tried that year. And overall, in the NHL, I don't know, there's 26 teams, let's call it 30 players each. There's 1,000 people playing professional hockey. Well, there's probably 1 million kids in Canada who tried to play professional hockey. So you can't just look at the successes and say, okay, so that's the path. Now, on the other hand, if you really think about it, there's maybe 1,000 people making money in any professional sport, but at Google or Apple, there's 100,000 people making a decent living, right? It's just the probability of being successful in Apple or Google and making a decent living is much greater than being a professional athlete.
Yeah, in some ways, it's almost a curse to be like Division I college level good at something, and just on the cusp of whether you can go pro or not. It's very hard to keep perspective about, maybe I need to have a career outside of whatever sport that you're in.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, because you are one ACL tear away from not being in the top tier, right? I mean, it's that simple. And I would say that I bet you if you did an analysis that the average programmer, gaming programmer over a lifetime makes more money than most professional athletes who are, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is only one LeBron, right? There's only one Michael Jordan. And maybe those guys, I heard some statistics. I heard some statistic that the average NFL career is 3 years. Mm-hmm. So 3 years, you make, I don't know, $2 million a year, so $6 million. On the other hand, you're a top programmer and you make, I don't know, $250,000 a year for 20 years plus the stock options. You're better paid than a professional athlete, and and you don't have concussions all the time.
Right, you could buy stock in Tesla or government bonds.
Yes,
and you can live your life the same way. Yeah, it's I've been a staffer my whole life, and I feel very fortunate to know about myself. I don't want to start a company. I like being in big, huge, giant companies where I have resources to do everything, and all I have to do all day long is just think. And I feel very, very, very lucky. Awesome. But I don't think I would fit in very well in the Silicon Valley.
Well, that's not necessarily
what
negative.
What are you doing? You want to stay where you are?
I'm sorry?
People would say to me in the Silicon Valley, Todd, what are you doing? You want to stay where you are for the next 5 years? Yeah, I do.
I mean, seriously, that is the mentality in Silicon Valley, or at least it was. Now, I'm not saying that's optimal, and it's definitely not for everyone. But I think one of the realizations we have to understand is that it's two kinds of, beasts. So one kind of beast wants to slay the dragon. And another kind of beast is the person who gets the slain dragon and puts systems in place and puts in, guidelines and operates the business and makes the version 1 go to 1.1 as opposed to version 1 go to 2. So, it takes different kinds of people and mindsets. There is the entrepreneur, slay the dragon, take the hill. And then there is the person who, okay, so now the hill is taken. We need to put in the water. We need to turn on the electricity. We need to get the school system. We need to put in plans and voting systems and all that. That person is just as important. But you never read about them.
No. So let's talk about that mountain of people that you never read about. This will be kind of a fun subject, right? So okay, we all get that people read about Benioff and Gates and all that.
Right.
And so if you had to talk about the traits of the entrepreneur who failed, what would you say are the common traits of that group?
The common traits of the entrepreneur who failed is probably a combination of bad luck, poor timing, and delusional personality. not necessarily in that order. And what I mean by this is if you look at the entrepreneurs who were successful, a lot of it is good luck and being in the right place and good timing that if Steve Jobs wasn't there when chips were just coming out and getting more powerful and cheaper, who knows? The person who created the Newton for Apple, which was the first PDA, it was too big, too slow, too whatever. That person was that person incompetent, or was that person just bad timing? If that person had come out 10 years later, chips would be cheaper, faster, things would be smaller, it would be a different world. So a lot of it, I think, is timing, and a lot of it is luck. And that is one of the downfalls of Silicon Valley, is that, people have a very hard time separating luck from causation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's to use the surfing analogy, there are many times I just turn around and paddle and I catch the wave, and that was just pure dumb luck. It wasn't skill, because there are, many more times where I think I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't catch the wave. So, as I get older and older, I've come to believe that it's better to be lucky than smart.
It's fascinating to think, had Jeff Bezos, for whatever weird reason, started 2 years earlier or 2 years later, if he would still be where he is. And there's
no
a
kidding.
very strong case to be made that no, he would have missed it, or others would have been Jeff Bezos and not him.
Listen, so let's take that case. So, if I were doing a critique of Amazon in the early days, I would say, okay, so people will buy stuff like books because there's no size, there's no color, there's no smell, right? There's no freshness to books. People will buy CDs. It's this easy, simple thing that you just stick in an envelope. People will buy DVDs. But then when you get to, there's this company called Zappos, and it's for people to buy shoes. I would have said there is no way that's going to work, because to me, buying a shoe, especially if you're into fashion, I really would think that you have to see the shoe, you have to try on the shoe, you have to see the color. Is it comfortable? The leather, how does it smell? I mean, there's like a whole thing with buying shoes, right? It's not click on this, put it in my shopping basket. And obviously Zappos, which was acquired by Amazon, succeeded. So, what the hell do I know? But I would not have thought people would buy shoes. Now, I think to Zappos' credit, what they did is they made buying the shoe risk-free by paying for returns. And so you could return the shoe at no cost. So whereas other e-commerce companies, if you wanted to return something, you had to call an 800 number to get a return authorization number, and that put you in a phone tree. And then 30 minutes later, they finally tell you, okay, here's your return number. You need to take it, put it in a box, and ship it to us. And you pay shipping, and if we get it, we'll let you know.
Yeah, they made it intentionally difficult because their accountants had run the numbers that if this percentage of the people return and this and that, and Tony Hsieh was looking way out.
Yes.
And he had a vision. Yeah, it's hard to hold the line though.
Well, I mean, can you imagine encountering an accountant who said, listen, so if we pay shipping both ways, it's going to have this cost, but I have calculated that cost is minuscule compared to the amount of trust that we will create in the Zappos business model. So although we will get such and such return and such fraud, the fact that people think they can return shoes so easily will mean that they will buy more shoes, and they'll buy a shoe, 3 colors, and we think, oh my God, what if they send all 3 colors back? But once the shoe is in your house, no matter how easy Zappos or Amazon made it, you still had to put it back in the box. You had to take it to the UPS store. You had to do something, right? And at that point, you already paid. It's like, screw it, just keep it. And I don't know what accountant would have calculated and said, yeah, you know what, let's give free shipping because it's going to pay off in the long run.
And then when you're doing it, I've always used the example of Amazon Prime. Like, can you imagine the cost on the long tail of the extreme Amazon Prime users?
Okay.
Can you imagine the cost? And they hold the line. For all I know, maybe they actually kick some people off of Amazon Prime. I don't know. But basically, they're willing to eat it.
Amen, Todd. I mean, I'm a believer. Like, if you had told me, okay, guy, you pay what is it, 75 a year, 100? I don't know. I don't even know what it is. So you pay,
can double it. I'll still pay. It's fine.
Okay, you pay $200 a year, but then you get guaranteed overnight delivery. And then, I mean, if an accountant did an analysis of Amazon Prime, you'd have to say, oh my God, people are going to abuse this. They're going to buy a toothbrush. And then the next day they're going to buy toothpaste. And then the next day they're going to buy, Q-tips. And we're going to send out all overnight separate packages. And those things cost us, $15 to ship. And the Q-tip is $5. And so we're going to, and then they're going to send the Q-tips back. Oh my God. But I tell you, so Amazon Prime, just the pure convenience of it, and the thought that, so now I'm getting free music, free video, Amazon. What I think Amazon should have done what I think Amazon should have done when the vaccination started was they should have done a program where Amazon Prime, we bring the vaccine to you, right? So put nurses and doctors in the Amazon truck and say, okay, Amazon Prime customers, you will get the vaccine first. Oh my God. At least 150 million people would have signed up for Amazon Prime. There's 150
Is there 150 million people left that haven't signed? There's 150 million people left that haven't signed up for Prime yet? No, it's a great idea.
That's a good question. I wonder how many people, but if you, I don't know how we're going down these little rat holes here, but if you took the number of people who signed up for Amazon Prime and multiplied it by the price for Amazon Prime, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of return shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I never return anything, so
I think Amazon Prime is one of the reasons that Amazon has reached such dominance. And right at the start of, imagine pitching the idea of Amazon Prime. That would be so scary. Everybody can get overnight delivery, and we're going to, after the third package, we're losing money, or, there's some calculation, right? But I guess people never, they can, it's easy to calculate this kind of risk, but it's very hard to calculate the upside of when people think, Amazon Prime, I'm not going to go to market. I'm just going to buy everything from Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
That has enormous upside.
And it's all held together by the simple idea, well, what does the customer want? And it's so easy to lie to yourself and tell yourself, well, I don't think they really value that or this or the other.
Yeah.
And it's usually expensive to give the customer what they want because their demands are high. We have it in our business, and it's expensive to give them what they want. But the rewards are big. When you talk about the biggest brands in the world, they just delight their customers.
Yeah, I interviewed for my podcast a guy named Colin Breyer, and he was Jeff Bezos's chief of staff for a few years. And so he explained how it worked, and I was really blown away. So the title of his book is Working Backwards. And the concept here is that rather than thinking about what you're currently doing, what you can do, what gaming technology do we have, what iPhone technology do we have, what are we good at? We're good at multiplayer games. We're good at making handheld devices. Instead of working forward from what you can do or what you are doing, you work backwards from what people want. And I think that is a great insight, that working backwards means that kind of have a guaranteed customer, you're empathizing with the customer, they want that, so let's just build what we know they want instead of making the shit that we want and hoping they buy it.
Yeah, and then you tell yourself, not necessarily you or me, but like people, we tell ourselves a bunch of lies along the way. Okay, we're opening up a pizza restaurant. Okay, do they want high quality ingredients or low quality ingredients? Do they want pleasant ambiance or not? Do they want low prices or high prices? Do they want comfortable chairs or not? These are very simple concepts. We are not advanced creatures.
Well, and to use another metaphor that I think we encounter every day is, so working backwards. Oh yeah, our customers like CAPTCHA. And our customers, they want to help us solve this puzzle. Like, which picture has a stoplight in it? Click on all the pictures with a stoplight. Click on all the pictures that show a car, because our customers want to verify their identity. Yeah. I mean, what drug are they on?
No, I'll come in complaining about something. I'll say, like, I hate this thing and that we did in our game. This is ridiculous. I should have caught it before, but I didn't. And they're like, well, Todd, we haven't really heard any complaints about it. I'm like, please stop. Okay, they're just, nobody's going to educate you how to make a good game, or us or anything else. We missed it. It's bad. It's wrong. Please stop with, we haven't heard any complaints, as though that's somehow the measuring stick.
Yeah, that is a very slippery slope.
Yeah, the complaints are the missing people. Yeah. So I've got a question for you. So, I mean, Steve Jobs is, legendarily difficult and tough and everything else. I mean, you were there, you were in the room with him and stuff like that. Is he the tyrannical or, sledgehammer type guy that he's portrayed in popular media?
In short, yes.
Wow.
Well, okay, so it requires more than that answer. So the answer is yes. He was a tough guy, extremely demanding. And I will tell you with total honesty that he intimidated me, and I was scared of him. And I saw him just rip a few people in public, like rip them. He would not hesitate to rip you in public. And so, with all the positive, arguably toxic psychology, all the thought about, you need to communicate and be open and transparent and reach mutually beneficial goals and always focus on the positive and, constructively view the negative and, all this kind of pop psychology, HR, motivation, all that. Steve Jobs did none of that shit. I mean, he just, I don't know about other people in the Mac division, but I was just deathly afraid that someday he would call on me and rip me in public. And I tell you something, fear works as a motivating factor. At least it worked for me. And so, and now I can talk about this and laugh about it because I survived it. But I don't think I would be where I am were it not for that fear and intimidation. It wasn't kumbaya, and it wasn't, unicorns, much less farting pixie dust. I mean, it was a scary place. But you know what? I think there are many tyrants in the world. There are many assholes in the world. Don't get me wrong. But Steve Jobs was brilliant, and he had vision, and he could call the future. So I think what people confuse about Steve Jobs is, so he was a difficult kind of asshole of a person. So if I want to be a Steve Jobs, that's what I'll be. Well, no, not really. I mean, the part of what made Steve Jobs special is, yes, he had those characteristics, but he also could call the future. I mean, he really knew what people would either want or what he could convince them they want. Whereas most people who just are in Steve Jobs emulation mode, they're just assholes. The asshole part is the easy part. It's the visionary part that's the hard part.
Do you think if he was like a super friendly, super charming guy who every time he heard a bad idea, he's like, it's interesting, it's just not really my cup of tea. And do you think Apple would have been in the same spot, like just because his genius was so high?
Honestly, no.
It needed that. It needed.
I think that if he had been this kind of, that's interesting, let's think about that, whatever, which he wasn't. He was like, that is shit. It's like, what's wrong with you? Why would you even think? I mean, that would be his kind of reaction, right? I hope profanity is okay on this podcast. But anyway, so, he would say, this is shit. Now, you could make the case that instead of saying to guy, your work is shit, you could have said something like, did you really swing for the fences on this guy? Did you take a full swing or did you do a check swing? Arguably communicating the same kind of dissatisfaction, but maybe without most of the trauma. But I have to say that I don't think Apple would be where it is were he not like that. Now, this is such a dangerous thing, but this is not me advocating that everybody should be like that. Okay, because it isn't necessary to, just rip people. But I think the reason why he got away with it, and in fact it became a feature as opposed to a bug, is that most of the time he was right. I mean, right? I mean,
it forgives a lot of sins, yeah.
And I think people understand that, he was right. And so you upped your game. I'll tell you a Steve Jobs story. So one day I'm in my cubicle, I'm working, and he shows up with somebody I never met. And he doesn't introduce this person. He just says, "Guy, what do you think of this company called Nowhere?" It was an educational software company. I said, "Well, Steve, I got to tell you, it's a mediocre company, mediocre product, drill and practice, 2 + 2 = 4. Doesn't really take advantage of all the goodness of Macintosh. It's not a strategic product or company for us." So I'm like ripping on this product and company, right? And then he says, "Guy, I want you to meet the CEO of Nowhere." Now, so, lesson number one is tell the truth. If I had tried to be, I didn't exactly say it's a piece of shit, but I definitely didn't say it's the world's greatest piece of educational software. So if you really believe it's not great, you should tell the truth. And I'll tell you the backstory of this story is that, knowing what I know, there's a very good case that Steve was there's a very good case to be made that what happened was Steve was meeting with this CEO, okay? And the CEO says, "Oh, yeah, we're doing so well. And our software is just flying off the shelves. We can't keep it in stock. Our software is revolutionary, patent pending, curve jumping. It's going to change education in America. Our software is so good." And then Steve would say, "No, it's not. It's shit." And the guy said, No. We're selling thousands of copies and we're getting awards from teachers. And, we have the most amazing educational software in the history of man. And Steve would say, "No, it's not. You got shit." And then Steve would say, "Let's go see Guy. Guy is my software evangelist. Let's go see what he says." So they walk over to my cube and I more or less, reinforce what Steve says. Now, if I had said, "Oh no, Steve, this is freaking amazing software that's going to revolutionize educational software and, the teaching world," I probably would have been fired on the spot. Steve probably would have said, "Guy, you're so freaking clueless. I can't have you as my software evangelist."
He was clearly sort of, if I was doing that, if I was introducing you, I'd be like, "Hey, I want you to meet the CEO," and and that would be your tip to not destroy,
right?
But clearly, so it's like, okay, here we go. Yeah,
I only know the TV side of him, but it's kind of like Gordon Ramsay of tech. Now, this is an interesting thing. I would bet that if you asked people who have worked as chefs for Gordon Ramsay, I bet a lot of people might say, "Well, he just ripped me and it was very traumatic, but he made me the chef that I am." Mm-hmm. And as I look back on my life, I will tell you that the teachers and the bosses who were the hardest on me taught me the most. It's not the ones that I could buffalo or the ones that, let me slack off. It's the ones that held my feet to the fire. Now, in Steve's case, he didn't just hold your feet to the fire. He threw you in the fire. But
why? I mean, this is in a world now. It's like it's Steve Jobs. He could literally come in every day and throw his coffee on me, and I'd be like, "No problem." But I have the benefit. Yes, sorry, you spilled your coffee. Sorry, I was in the way of your coffee there, Mr. Jobs. But that's what the benefit of history of working for a legend. When you're living through history, why did people take it? When they didn't know they were working for the legend.
Even when he was alive, and so, Macintosh was introduced in '84. I think Steve got fired in, I don't know. Well, I don't know when he was fired. I mean, it was 5 years later or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But even then, just creating Apple with the Apple II, the success of Apple in Silicon Valley. He wasn't the legend that we think of him as now, but he was a very successful, entrepreneur. I mean, people admired Apple already with the Apple II. So it's not like he was a nobody and he got away with it. He had a track record at that point. So that's one factor that you have to even at that point, he was pretty legendary. Not as legendary as now, but he was right up there already. And it was an honor and a privilege to work for him. You know, so that's one thing. And then, but I think even more of an important factor is he was right. When he told you you had something that was shit, he was right.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was right. And when he told you that you had something great, which was very seldom, he was also right. So I think a lot of it is that he wasn't smoking you just because he wanted a power play, right? It wasn't just because he wanted to feel like the big man. He was smoking you because you didn't do a good job. He was right most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So to listeners and viewers, being a jerk isn't the recipe.
No.
Being right is the recipe. and then if you're really right all the time, then maybe you can be a little bit nasty and maybe get away with it. But
yeah, I think it's very high risk strategy to think you're the next Steve Jobs.
I don't advise it either. Yeah.
You know, somebody at Theranos is finding that out right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I would say that if you think you're the next Steve Jobs, you're not.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, Apple famously wrecked the cell phone industry as it was known. I think on the cover of Forbes, like back in like 2007 or something like that, there was like this thing. It's a Nokia. Can anybody stop them? And it's like this fascinating cover.
Or
like,
Motorola.
Yeah, exactly. And even in Motorola in Google's hands, right? And and so it's fun to think this. This is a fun question. Who is the Nokia of 2007 or Motorola of 2021?
Oh.
Who might be?
General Motors, maybe. You know, let's face it. The closest thing we have to Steve Jobs right now is Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, in my humble opinion, single-handedly made electric cars viable. Yeah. And so, you know, if it wasn't for Elon Musk, do you think General Motors and all the other car manufacturers would be making electric cars? No freaking way, right? They'd be we'd be cutting down trees. We'd be digging for oil. We'd be, you know, pipelines across America. It would be a different world, right? So, I mean, it's amazing what, you know, one person can do. Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. I mean, you could listen, I've never met Elon Musk, so I have no idea, but you know, you could make the case that Elon Musk may have more impact on the world than Steve, because Steve brought us computers and smart devices, right? And they, you know, they wiped out Nokia and you know, Motorola. But Elon Musk, I mean, he's taking on the car business. He's making tunnels under cities. He's changing solar panels. He's sending people to Mars. I don't understand his whole cyber currency thing, but you know, Elon Musk is in a lot of places.
You're over there in the center of the center in the Silicon Valley, and so if you think about a world where Elon just hadn't been born, you can make the case that like he's literally doing things that weren't otherwise going to happen. And I think that's how he chooses those things, is because he looks at them and says, they're not going to happen naturally unless I do them myself. So bless Elon. But why isn't there more innovation out there? You know, like we were on the moon in 1969. And you know, we built the Hoover Dam. You know, we built the Empire State Building in 18 months. You know, we used to do big things. And like, okay, coronavirus, we found the cure pretty quickly. So, you know, we can still do stuff when we try. Why isn't there more of it? Absent Elon Musk, we'd be like, where's all the innovation?
I don't know, man. It's like, do you have any hard questions for me? I would say that A lot of it is that the larger a company, and ironically, the more successful, the harder it is to get to what I call the next curve, right? So, to go way back in history, there used to be an ice harvesting industry where people would cut blocks of ice from a frozen lake or a pond. 50 years later, there was ice factory. Now, ice factory, you don't have to be in a cold city. You're not outside. You could have an ice factory in Honolulu. You couldn't harvest ice in Honolulu. Another 50 years go by, and now we have refrigerator. So now you don't have to be near the ice factory. The iceman doesn't have to deliver ice to your house. You have your own personal ice factory. But nobody went from harvester to factory to refrigerator company. That's because most people define themselves in terms of what they already do, as opposed to working backwards from what their customer wants. Because the customer of the ice harvester, the ice factory, and the refrigerator all want the same thing, right? They want convenience and cleanliness. They don't care if it's harvesting ice, freezing ice centrally, or personal refrigerator. They just want that benefit. And I think that is the very important lesson. And so, why is there not innovation? Because most companies think of themselves as, well, we make ice in an ice factory. That's our business. That's our mission. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, we provide cleanliness and convenience. How can we do that? And I'll give you a really scary negative example. And every time I think about this example, it just shocks me. So in 1975, an engineer at Kodak invented a digital camera. Okay, wrap your mind around that. An engineer at Kodak invented digital photography. Now, how many of us use a Kodak digital camera today? Zero. How many of us use Kodak film today? Well, maybe not zero, but close to zero. And so, can you imagine that engineer going to his boss saying, I figured out a way where people don't have to buy film anymore.
You're fired.
That's a career limiting move. Like, okay, yeah, let's go tell the board of directors of Kodak, we figured out a way people don't have to buy film anymore. Give us a hero's welcome. But, again, they should have worked backwards. They should have figured out that, people are not buying film from Kodak. They're buying a way to preserve memories. And if you can preserve memories with a chip, with instant feedback on what the picture looked like, that's a better way. But if you're Kodak and you're publicly traded and you're worried about what Wall Street says in the next 89 days, because, digital photography was going to take more than 89 days to make it financially viable, that's what happens. So I think that is the greatest killer of innovation, is probably this, the larger you get, the more stuck you are, the more you have to report financial results every 90 days. It just becomes a whole downward spiral.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, is that how big companies sort of get blindsided? Is they just get this tunnel vision and they can't see? Is it literally just what you described? Plus maybe we can't gamble on a digital camera in this particular instance because that's going to eat into our, it's going to destroy a couple quarters and it's only got a 20% chance of maybe working according to the guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Todd. All of that, plus what you alluded to before, where you said, nobody's complaining, right? Referring to your own crew when when you say, I did this wrong, but then they say, well, nobody's complaining. What's the problem? Well, I don't think anybody was calling up Kodak saying,
right,
I want a digital camera, right? They're saying, I want Ektachrome to be deeper, richer, or, whatever. Nobody was calling up Kodak saying, I want a better way to do photography.
Yeah. I read this wonderful interview with, maybe it was the chief product officer of Nintendo. And he was saying before they did the Wii, he's like, if we had asked our players, what do you want? They would have asked for more advanced controls, more advanced games, more richer experience. And they would have never said, simplify everything. Give me a wand that my grandmother can play tennis in the living room with. And I just think that's so cool. And you get there by sitting alone in a room and thinking. You know, your customers don't tell you, nobody tells you. And but I find that fascinating.
God, I completely agree. I mean, I think one of the worst sources for true innovation for a company is its customer base. Because thinking back on my experience at Apple, I hate to disappoint you, but there was no Apple II user calling us up saying, you know, we need to have a new computer that is graphical user interface with a mouse, 9-inch display, monochrome, not compatible with Apple II software. I don't think anybody called us up and said, give us that computer. And so, you know, for I think for the gaming business, some visionary, Todd or somebody has to be, God, you know, we got to get to AR. We got to get to, you know, all this kind of stuff, because people might not be able to call up and say, yeah, I want an AR game, or I want to put on goggles and be in a 3D immersive world. But it's your job to anticipate what they will come. Well, you have a twofold job. You either have to anticipate what they will come to want, or you have to build what you can and make them want it.
What's interesting is you're spot on. Like in the actual game development process, you know, casino game development process, you sort of, like you touched on it earlier, you work backwards from the player's seat. What do they want? Do they want a game that's very clearly and plainly honest, or not? Yeah, okay, for sure they want that. Do they want a game that pays back that pays back a high percentage or a low percentage? They want a high percentage, you know. And do they want something that's fun and rich? Okay, yes, they do. And so, like, okay, check. Now it might be expensive, it might be risky, and it's a little bit like writing a hit song. You know, it's hard to get a song that's a real foot tapper, but you know, if you just put yourself in the other seat and you work backwards, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. I think that's a very cool idea.
I absolutely agree, and you know, I would say that the probability of failing working backwards is much lower than the probability of failing working forwards. Unless you're Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs is clearly the exception to the rule, right? Because I don't know, you know, because Steve Jobs was an order of magnitude more visionary and intelligent than I am. So I don't know how his thinking was. You know, was it, people can't express what they really need, but working backwards from what they really need, even though they don't realize it yet, let's build this. That would be one interpretation of Steve. Another interpretation of Steve was, I'm going to build this freaking thing because I want to use it, and trust me, they will want to use it too. And it could be either one, but you know, for most companies, it's neither is the point.
So why is landing on the answer so hard to come by? Okay, and then maybe what tricks do you have? People are watching this and they're thinking, you know, we're trying to come up with the next big thing or whatever.
Right.
And they're going to run the scale. Some of them will be super innovative. Some of them will lack it entirely.
Right.
And, you know, why is it so hard, and how can they get better at landing on the answer?
Well, I have several thoughts. So thought number one is work backwards, obviously, right? So that requires empathy. That requires walking a mile in your customer's shoes, you know, all that kind of stuff. So one is this empathetic work backwards. A second theory would be, and I think this is true in Silicon Valley, that the successful Silicon Valley startups are the ones that the founders build what they want to use. So in a sense, it's even better than working backwards. It's working from within, right? So if Woz wanted a personal computer, he built it. Luckily, he wasn't the only person who wanted it. So you can't exactly say that Woz was working backwards. I think he was working from his soul. So that would be another theory. You know, build the product or service that you want to use and just hope that you're not the only psychopath who wants it. That would be another theory.
May I just say how hard that is in the real world? Like, I mean, I'm in a big publicly traded company now, and I talk to competitors and I talk to operators. There's so much pressure to say, give me something that's for people in this country or this market or this profile of player or this. And honestly, to your earlier advice, we, for the most part, listen to ourselves, and we make the games that we're dying to play tomorrow. And so far, it's working. But it's so hard. The heat in the kitchen is intense. We need games for this market. We need games for these kinds of players. It's hard.
Well, it may be that, gaming is such a different world that, and I use this in a positive sense, but if you're a gamer, geek, or nerd, and you build the game that you want to use, I would say that's very high probability, as opposed to what? You're putting yourself in the place of someone who has a undergraduate degree, a bachelor's with 2.4 kids, who's driving a Volvo. Let's make the game for that demographic. I mean, give me a break. What is that going to be? You're going to go back to Frogger. I mean, I think for you, I would make the case that the great works of literature are also people were writing for themselves. They weren't thinking, I'm going to write this book for this kind of reader. I think a great book comes out that, you're spilling your guts on the table.
Yeah.
It's not about, targeting a demographic.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to read it yourself? Do you want to play it yourself? Do you want to consume it yourself? Yeah.
Oh, I will give you a maybe even better theory that is you're doing it based on what your wife is telling you she needs. Now that is a rich vein.
I don't think there's any shortage of products out there then.
That would be the richest vein.
If you're a small company out there, so I'm in a big company, but there's a lot of small companies, and I want to see these small companies sort of thrive. I love the casino industry. I love gaming industry. The more, the merrier. Everybody is good. It's good. If you're a small company, how should you be thinking or operating differently than if you're a big company?
Well, I think the most important concept is that a small company, a startup, an early company, a young company, has to realize that a startup, young company, small company, is not a small version of a big company. And I think many, many small startups think, I'm just a small version of General Motors or Apple or Tesla or, pick anything. So I think it's completely two different kind of animals. And a big company usually knows what its customers want. They can do these incremental revisions. The financial model is set. Everything, you can crank a spreadsheet and predict almost everything, except the invention that wipes you off the face of this earth. But, so more or less, a big old company can operate with that kind of perspective. But a startup cannot be thinking like that. They have to be thinking, how do we get to the next curve? How do we destroy old companies? It's a completely different mindset. And so step number one is, do not think of yourself as a small, big company. You are a different animal. I'll give you a very illustration at the startup phase. So I think at the start of many companies, you have to do things that cannot possibly scale and you couldn't do as a large company. And so let's take an example of software, right? So if you're a young software company, you need to establish some success for funding, for brand awareness, for revenue, so you need to establish them. So you have to bend over backwards. If you find a large company, you find a specific group, you have to customize your software for them. You have to train them. You have to do everything for them so that somebody becomes your key customer, your reference account, whatever. And that's with the full realization that, oh my God, if every customer required custom software, training, hand-holding, on-site visitation, if we had to do that for every customer, we could not succeed. Well, I'm telling you, you have to do that at the start because you need to get traction. And trust me when I tell you, if you get traction, you will figure out a way to make your business scalable. But if you think from day one, you're thinking, how can I make my business scalable? You probably will create such a piece of crap that nobody wants it. You won't have to worry about scalability. Worrying about scalability is a high quality problem. You know, I tell you, every VC in the world is thinking, you know, just give me this investment where the biggest challenge is they can't ship fast enough. That is a high quality problem. Most companies and most VCs, their biggest problem is nobody is signing up for the service. You know, we cannot get any traction. I would love to have the constant problem of, oh my God, my entire portfolio, none of them can scale fast enough. Leads are coming in too fast. Oh my God, what a problem that would be.
Yeah. You don't need to solve for the problem of 10 years from now, I guess.
Yeah, because you know what? You're a small company. You got to do stuff that no large company would do. Right? No large. If you wanted to create a new word processor, you're going to have to handhold people to get these early influencers and thought leaders to use your word processor. This is very different than, someday we're going to be like Microsoft, so people have to just be able to buy Office and get going. Yeah, you're not a small version of Microsoft. You're a completely different beast.
Fascinating, yeah. I think that's great. So, you know, we're in the casino business. It's going online now.
Yeah.
It's increasingly coming to America. DraftKings, FanDuel, you hear increasingly about it. We're there in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, some other states coming. And it's starting to make waves. Wall Street's starting to pay attention. Are you hearing any buzz about it in the Silicon Valley? Silicon Valley's been very central in social casino, which has the word casino in it, but there's nothing gambling about it. Are you starting to hear any buzzes about that in Silicon Valley yet, or not? Not really.
Not really, but that doesn't mean it's not happening because, you know, I'm like 67 years old sitting in a closet in Santa Cruz surfing half the day. So I'm not a good data point. And you know what? I would also make the case, Todd, that, I mean, in a perfect world, you'd love if I told you, everybody's just bouncing off the ceiling thinking about this. But on the other hand, I would make the case that, you know what? A 67-year-old who's semi-retired, who doesn't understand your business and doesn't know what's happening in your business, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
let me tell you something. I'm very relaxed to hear that Google and Amazon are not thinking about our business. That's perfectly fine by us. Yeah.
I think, you know, I would be more worried about two guys in a garage or two gals in a garage or a guy and a gal in a garage in the computer science degree at Stanford saying, man, we can make a better casino game than this. That's who I would worry about. I think your job there is to hire those people and make them, you know, eat you from the inside.
Well, we're looking for them. If they're out there, call me. Find me, call me. We're looking. We want the innovative people.
What's it like to live in Malta?
It's awesome. So this is like the ground zero. This is like Las Vegas of online gaming. And so, you know, we don't have the glitzy buildings to show it. It's just a bunch of rooms with surfers. But this is ground zero. And so it is like the intellectual capital of the casino gaming world right now, because online is way faster than land-based at the moment. And you can just iterate faster. There's more games. There's more everything.
Sure.
And so it's a buzz with action. Like, I'm a pure casino guy through and through. Like, when I was 10 years old, I'm like, oh, casino. And so
10 years old, you're shooting craps.
Yeah. No, literally, not shooting craps, but I was literally inventing a dice game, running around the neighborhood with my skateboard and a what do you call it? A case of Coke, an empty cardboard case that 4 6-packs goes in here, and then another one going this way. And then I had all the prizes on this wall, and I would sell rolls to kids for 50 cents. Yeah. So I'm just, you know, this is what I was born to do, and now I make games for a living at the highest level, and it's a blast. And this is the last job I need, and so I'm thrilled. And being around the other people and there's different people. There's like online streamers in the YouTube world, and then there's operators of casinos, and then there's other game makers, and it's a buzz with action, and it's cool. It's this tiny little pinprick in the middle of the Mediterranean, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
So why don't we
have to visit you someday.
We have the biggest game. Please come out. I'd love to show you around. So a lot of cruise ships stop here, actually. So when your cruise ship stops here, you ring me up. So the biggest game we have is called Lightning Roulette. So why don't we do a Lightning Roulette round? And the fun of this is I'll shout out a word. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 5 of them. You tell me your reaction to how it will be in 2030. Cool?
In 2030?
In 2030.
Frick, I don't know how things will be in 2022. Well, okay.
Don't worry, that makes it easier. It's harder. It takes much longer to prove you're wrong or right.
Good point.
Yeah. So
good point.
Okay. Virtual reality.
Wait. So, is it just a positive thumbs up or thumbs down?
No. Just
what am I saying?
Just a quick thought. What do you think its future is gonna? What's it gonna look like in 2030? It's all
totally immersive, just totally addictive. People be going crazy because it's too addictive and too attractive.
Wow. Okay. Bold on VR. The smartphone.
Smartphone will be implanted in your brain. You wouldn't even have to carry anything anymore.
No more bricks.
It'll be Apple Guy Play.
Wow. You think actually in the brain, or you think like basically the brick is eradicated?
My prediction is that by 2030, an Apple iPhone will last 24 hours without a charge. They're gonna just push the edge. They'll finally get their batteries together.
I grew up in a world where we would make a phone call, and there was no concept of a dropped call. That didn't exist. That was now 1/3 of all phone calls. That's just sorry, I lost you there.
Yeah, and that's in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
right?
we accept that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The irony may be that in countries that never had good copper infrastructure, they could skip all that and go straight to good cellular infrastructure, right? So you may have better cellular coverage where there was never good copper coverage.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's some country that's, way behind, and they're laying down their cell network for the first time with 5G.
Yeah. That's a high quality problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in Silicon Valley, I can't drive on 101 without.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in a 1G world here. Yeah.
Yeah. Bitcoin.
Gone.
I like it. Bold.
I don't understand Bitcoin. I got to tell you, I do not understand Bitcoin. I mean, Todd, if I said to you, okay, so Guy, we want you to make a speech and we're going to pay you in Bitcoin. And I would say, so you're telling me you're going to pay me in something that if Elon Musk puts up a emoji could be worth twice as much or half as much? And if Elon Musk says, well, you take too much energy mining the Bitcoin, or like, let's say that somebody had ransomware and they got $5 million, but the day after you paid me, the FBI reported that they got the $5 million back. Like, what kind of currency is that? I don't understand. So, if you told me that Bitcoin is just, do you remember there was something called tulip mania?
Sure.
Right? This Bitcoin is tulip mania. There's no reason why tulips went up in price. There's no reason why Bitcoin goes up in price. So, I want to get paid in a currency that tomorrow will be worth basically the same as it is today. Okay, I don't want to wake up where it's worth twice as much or more likely half as much. My simple brain cannot handle Bitcoin. And I listen to these arguments about, why it's so great. And I want something stable for my currency. My books, my writing, my podcasts, selling stuff. That's where I take my risk. I would like to think that once I take the risk and God help me, I succeed, that's the last risk I have to take. I don't want to take another risk where it says, depending on Elon Musk's emoji, you might have made more money or less money. I don't understand that. Now, if you tell me it's just rolling the dice, to use, your kind of vernacular, if it's just a freaking online game and the value is just like whatever it is, okay, I understand that. But don't start telling me that it's the future of currency because it has, inherent intellectual advantages. I do not. You want me to tell you how I really feel?
No, I love it. A good, solid negative position on Bitcoin. People are scared to do that these days. Even when Warren Buffett was asked in his annual meeting of shareholders, he's like, I'll pass on that one.
Oh, yeah? Is that right?
Yeah. And then Charlie Munger's it's rat poison.
Well, when somebody, passes on it, it means they're negative, right? And if they're positive.
Right.
Just because somebody says they think it's going to be successful, that doesn't mean. I mean, first of all those people who are Bitcoin evangelists, they're kind of conflicted, right? I mean, so I read someplace that now you can put the Bitcoins into your 401ks. Well, that is a real smart thing, right? You can put your retirement. Oh, God, I don't want to.
I love it.
Meanwhile,
I like the boldness.
2030 Bitcoin is 5 million each, and guys looking like a schmuck.
Yeah. It's easy to predict the past, as we said, right?
Well, listen, this is the guy who left Apple twice, right? So what do I know? You want to make money in Bitcoin? Go opposite of me.
Last question. This is I'm sitting here, I'm looking at you right now, and you're full of life. You said you were surfing and you were in the water a couple hours ago, catching waves. People who are 25 aren't doing that. Give all of us a tip. There's plenty of people who are 25 that are sitting at home on their couch right now that aren't going to leave their house for the next 72 hours for sure.
Where?
What? You don't think
where?
You don't think we have an entire generation of video game players who are stuck at home?
Oh! I thought you meant they were confined because they're working so hard.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, just sloth.
Okay. Those people.
You're living this high energetic life, and it's cool. And like I think I think you're a great inspiration for people that want to when people think about like, yeah, my life has been good, man. I'm living in Santa Cruz. I'm surfing every day. That's cool. How do we get there, guy? Last question.
How do you get there? Well, first of all, I'm 67 years old, okay? So when I was at 25, I wasn't surfing all day. God, I started surfing at 60. God help me. If I had fallen in love with surfing at 18, 12, or 6, there was no way that I would be where I am today. So thank God I found it late because it would have taken over my life. I think surfing is the most fun you can have legally. So how do you get there? I wish you know what? The bottom line is grit. It's just work your ass off. That's it. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you either work your ass off or you inherit a trust fund. Those are the only two options that I know. And I work my ass off. The secret to Guy's success is I am willing to grit it out. I'm willing to grind it out. I can outwork most people.
Fantastic. Well, Guy, thank you so much. What a fun conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I really enjoyed this.
All right. So, I'm going to see you in Malta
I'll
someday.
see you in Malta when your cruise ship stops here.
Yeah, my cruise ship stops in Malta. I'm going to come see you, and we're going into an air-conditioned building and looking at nerds at computer screens, right?
That's right. You're going to set up, you're going to pull out your phone, you're going to quickly set up an online gaming account, and we're going to fire away, and we're going to win some money.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to hold you to that.
All right, Guy. Take care. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.